guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Toni and I'm a homeschooling mom to 4 kids. And we're talking all about history today. I'm absolutely not a self-proclaimed history buff. I actually know very little about history. I'm sad to admit, because growing up, I just hated history. I found it very dry, very boring, and I didn't pay attention. I fell asleep in history class a lot. I'm not gonna tell you what grade I got in history in high school, but I didn't do so well because I didn't pay attention. I didn't love it. If you can't really get involved and really put yourself in history, it's gonna be really hard to get it because it's just numbers and facts and dates, events and things that maybe don't mean anything to you, and that's how it was to me. I have taken a whole, a 180 when it comes to teaching my kids history because I want them to love history, or at least really be able to understand it and get it and enjoy it more than I did. So I'm going to be sharing with you today a bunch of my favorite history resources and tools and just the way that I like to teach history and that I feel like my kids really learn history the best. So if you want to find out what those things are, then make sure you stay tuned. Okay, so this is a collaboration with a bunch of other really awesome homeschool mamas. This collaboration has been organized by Leilani from Living with Eve. So she is just awesome. I love her. I just love her personality. I love the way she teaches things in a fun way, and I cannot wait to hear what her perspective is on teaching history with her kids. And she is just super fun. If you have not ever seen any of her videos, make sure you head over to her channel after this and check her out because she's just so fun and so encouraging and just loves life, and she's an awesome mom. So make sure you check out her video. I'm gonna link the whole playlist below because there's a bunch of moms who are joining in on this, and they're talking about a bunch of all the different history to eras or topics or different things like that. So none of these videos are gonna be the same, which I love, love, love. So make sure you check out that playlist when you're done here. I'll link that down in my description box below. I'm gonna start off with my 5 favorite history resources and tools. So let's get started. Number 1, my favorite resource tool. I'm gonna call this a tool. My favorite tool for teaching history. This is gonna be amazing. The couch. The couch, okay? Now this might sound crazy. There's different ways you can teach history. You can sit at a desk and you can face the board and someone can read to you and you can listen and you can take notes, and that can be history. Or you can do it the way I love to do it. I think we're an eclectic homeschool family, but I really love the Charlotte Mason style of teaching history. And that is on the couch. But I love reading on the couch with my kids. I don't stand up at a podium in the front of the classroom, and teach to my kids and just have them listen. We learn as a family, and I'm learning right along with them. I sit next to them. They're all next to me. You guys have probably seen this in my Day of the Life videos before, but we sit on the couch together and we read history together and we all participate. I don't just read all of it to them. This is another thing you've probably seen in my Biblioplan history, which is the history that we use this year and that we used last year. We read together, like all my girls. I read stuff, they read different things as we go. I call on them. It kind of helps make sure that they're paying attention and not off in la la land if they know they've got to read pretty soon. And it just switches it up so you're not just listening to mom the whole time. So anyway, the couch and reading together, that is definitely number 1. I love sitting on the couch. So that's my first thing, okay? Weird, but that's my first thing. Okay, the second way that I kind of alluded to a little bit with the Charlotte Mason, the second way that I love to teach history is with living books. I love living books. Now today, my focus, because all these moms in this collaboration were picking different time periods or different things in history that they wanted to talk about, I chose that I'm gonna talk about ancient history and biblical history. So that is what I'm kind of geared upon, but you can really use these tools and these resources for any time period of history. So I'm gonna share some of my favorite living books for teaching ancient history and biblical history, and especially intertwining history. I'm gonna talk about that. That's the whole point of living books, is getting yourself to plug yourself into the story and really live the history along with them. The whole point behind these living books, they have historical truth, historical facts and things and background with sometimes a made-up character, like a fictional character inside of the true history. And that's what I love about historical fiction. So there's stuff like this. But these Trailblazer books are really good Christian biblical-based books that teach history and teach biblical history. This one, these are all Christian heroes of faith and things like that. These are young readers. It says ages 8 to 12. Really, really good books. I see these at the thrift store all the time, but these are really good. We used Heart of Dakota a couple years ago, actually for quite a few years, and I loved it. They had some amazing, amazing books. I think Sunlight is another one, and Heart of Dakota, if you can get their book list, even if you don't use their curriculum. A lot of these books I discovered through Heart of Dakota, and they're just really good when we did that time period. But this is one, Little Miriam of Galilee, and it's just a Christian story about this girl named Miriam, and you learn about these true biblical places going through Galilee and her life and her experiences and things, but you walk along with her. I love that you get in. That's something I never did. I never got into history. Like, I never put myself into it. It was this like, okay, fact and boring, and my teacher was like Charlie Brown's mom and super boring. These are just different. These are so, so different. Anyway, that's a good one. This one, Fountain of Life. I'm not going to give you a huge description of all of these, but this was another one. This is about this boy named Eli, and he was in Jesus's time. So he shares things about his life while Jesus was living. And I think that's so cool you can read the Bible and really get into these stories. This is like another addition on top of that just enhances it. It just enhances it. Here's another one, Tirzah. This is another really good one. This followed a 12-year-old girl named Tirzah down the Nile and where she lived. It's slaves in Egypt, all this stuff. So it was really, really good. Talked about Pharaoh and the different things that you've heard in history and you've heard in Bible times, and you read it and just kind of can put yourself in that story. Anyway, super good. This is another one. This isn't specifically ancient history, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit by sharing this, but my daughter loved this book, Grandpa's Box. So you need to get this if you've never read this. It's so good. This was also from Heart of Dakota, but these kids would go over to Grandpa's house every single day, I think it was, I think it was every day after school or every once a week or something. Anyway, and their grandpa had this little box, and he would pull these little trinkets out. So you can see in the picture there, he would pull these little pieces out, and he would share a story that teaches different things for your Christian faith and what scripture emphasizes and tells us how to live. There's always this story to go along with it. It was so good. And anyway, I loved Grandpa's Box. Love it, love it. These also, you guys may have heard of these before. Hero Tales are so good. I actually picked these up from the library. I do own a copy of these, but our library had all three. And I just wanted to show you, you can go to the library. You don't have to own all of these. I just went to the library this afternoon and was like, let me see what they have that I could just easily grab. So these Hero Tales, this is Dave and Netta Jackson, and these follow different Christian heroes of the faith kind of thing, like missionaries or people that have impacted the world through their Christian ministries. There's 3 different volumes, but see, this one talks about, okay, I can't read it like that. John Bunyan, Jim Elliot, Watchman Nee, John Newton, Florence Nightingale, Corrie ten Boom. Then this is one of the other volumes. This is C.S. Lewis, Joy Ritterhoff, William Seymour, and then Amy Carmichael, Martin Luther, Dwight Moody. Anyway, all these like heroes of the faith that you've heard of, these are so good. They're just these true stories about these people. These were so good. I love those books. So those are really good ways to tie in biblical history with regular, whatever time period you're teaching kind of history, but to show that they're not 2 separate things. That was something that like I have never in my life learned biblical history, and I went to public school. They didn't talk about biblical history. So Sunday school was biblical history, and then school was, the history books, and they weren't the same. So that can be a dangerous thing if you think of Christian history as a Sunday school thing and these made up stories, but they're not made up stories. Anyway, 2 other books that I absolutely loved that I read with my girls. I think both of these were probably with Heart of Dakota, but I have also, some of them are with Biblioplan that we use now. So The Door in the Wall is one that was really good. And then The Raiders of the Sea. This is a whole series. And oh my goodness, this was so, so good. And it kind of left you like a cliffhanger. I won't tell you too much, but this was so good. My daughter, she put the second book on hold at the library as soon as we finished this because we wanted to find out what happened next. And there's a whole series. I don't know how many there are. I don't remember. But super good. Viking Quest. That was really good. So those are like the kind of an idea of what some of the living books are. Like I said, I went to the library and I just was like, let me look. We have a really small library, like a small town library. So you don't have a ton. Your library, if you're in a bigger city, you may have more options. But just like to see, what can I find with ancient Egypt or ancient times and things like that. The reason I love these kind of books, now I haven't actually read this specific book, but I just wanted to show you the pictures. Like the pictures, it really, I think no matter how old your child is, the pictures really make it come alive. They've got maps and they've got pictures of different things of the Egyptians, you know, doing different things. You know what these books look like. But these are just make such a big difference between this and a textbook, like a dry textbook with a bunch of words and dates. This just makes it come alive to me, I think. DK books, you guys probably know those. Those are really good. This just has a ton of pictures and it just makes it more interesting. I mean, if I assign this, go read this for 30 minutes, my girls would each probably read a different amount of this, but they'd all get something out of it. Really good. Eyewitness books, those are good too. You guys may have read those. They have a ton. Look how many books they have. But yeah, it's just the pictures. These are so cool because they'll show just all kinds of different things that you can learn with history that just makes it come alive. We want history to come alive, right? This was a really good one. I remember checking out when we were doing Vikings. My daughter loved this book. Your Life as an Explorer on a Viking Ship, and they have your life as an explorer on different time periods and different things in history. And these are really fun books. Even when I checked it out today, she was like, oh, I remember reading that. That was so good. Like the drawings are so good. And it was just really interesting. So you obviously have to be careful about some of those random books that you pick up at the library because they may have, you know, millions of years ago and things like that. But, you know, just be careful. It's really easy to find history books that are living books at the library. Okay, so that was a long time talking about living books, but I love living books. I think they're awesome for any age. Little kids all the way up to high schoolers, I think, can learn from living books. I love them. I think they're awesome. So my number 3 resource that I absolutely love and I think is a must, especially as homeschoolers, we have the freedom to do this, is field trips. Make history come alive by going to these places and having field trips. You can make your, I love it. I love it. Okay, I'm gonna share one field trip that we did this year that was absolutely amazing. A few months ago, my family went on a trip to the Ark Encounter down in Kentucky. If you guys haven't been there yet, you have to go. You seriously have to go. It was life-changing. I'm not kidding. It was so cool for me, let alone for my kids. Seeing it in person, first of all, and how massive it was, and how, you know, I think they followed the specifications of what we think the ark was in the Bible pretty precisely. It was huge. Like, that's just something that reading in a book, you're not going to be able to really get, like, how many cubits it was and how many whatever and this and that. Seeing it in person was amazing. It was so cool to see how big it was and to think about how long they actually took to build it. There were things as we walked through this ark, seeing that I had never thought of. Now, I know some of this is the imagination of the creators of the ark, that of this ark encounter, that it may not be exactly the way, you know, the Bible doesn't specify exactly some of these things, but I had never really studied the ark before. I didn't think about the different cages and like things that hold the animals. They had like a feeding system and a watering system for all the animals, and like even for their waste, their poop from the animals, they had this system that I never would have even thought of. And I thought that was so cool how you're able to see stuff like that maybe never crossed your mind, and you actually walk through the ark. It was the coolest thing, probably the coolest field trip I've ever been on. It was amazing. And we just learned so much. My kids are from 12 down to 6. And I would say they all learn the same. We had a friend who came with us, and she had even a baby, little kids. And they still, just the massive, amazingness of how big it is, you know, kept the attention of the little ones who maybe couldn't read. And we read some here and there to them, but just seeing it visually, they had little models of the people on the ark and of the flood, all the rooms of the ark. It was amazing. I felt like they thought of everything. It was so cool. And we, anyway, it was so cool to see this in person. We also went to the Creation Museum, and that was also amazing. I didn't take a whole lot of video there because I had already taken so much of the ark, but I loved it. It was so cool. And that was more, I think that was kind of more reading maybe with the Creation Museum, but it was also just really neat. They did have some different exhibits and stuff, but it was a lot of reading too. But I loved them both. I learned so much and wanted to get home and just dig into the Bible and really see. And I started studying on Noah's Ark, and it was awesome. And with my kids and stuff. But super cool, amazing field trip. If you have not gone, please go. It's totally worth the money. Kids are still free this year, for the rest of the year at least. Now's the time to go because it was amazing. I'll show you this living book that we have. This we used with Heart of Dakota before we even went to the Ark, the true story of Noah's Ark. And this is such a pretty book. And they actually have this for sale at the Ark Museum. We already owned it, but it has a lot of the stuff, that was in the Ark. Such pretty drawings. And it has this page in the middle. Let's see if I can find it. There's a page in the middle that like folds out. Here it is. That is like the whole Ark. And it gives you an idea of what it would have been like. And this was such a cool book. I love this. This was really, really neat. So this is the true story of Noah's Ark. It actually has an audio CD that reads it to the kids too. So I love this. This is actually put out by Master Books. Field trips, do field trips. This year we're doing modern history, like I said, and I want to go to Jamestown. And we just today read about Massachusetts and Cape Cod and things like that. I want to go there. I want to take my kids there. Museums. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I had museums at my fingertips, and now I'm not there anymore. And I don't have access to that, but I want to take my kids there to see, when we start studying the Holocaust, to learn about the Holocaust Museum. And actually, like, that was amazing. I remember doing that in high school, and that was like just life-changing to see the things in there. Really, you just experience it in a different way when you go on these field trips. And now, for ancient history, would it be amazing to go over to the Holy Land and experience all that stuff? Yes, I would love to do that. And I hope I get to one day. That's not something that we can necessarily pick up and take our kids to. Things like that are a little harder, but there's history museums that you can learn about that stuff. Any field trip that you can come up with that you can really experience what happened and like walk on the steps they walked on. Like I said, I grew up near Washington, D.C., so I've seen George Washington's house, and I've seen the White House and things like that. And like, it's just neat to see all those things. My kids haven't though. We only go home for like quick trips to see family, and it's kind of a bummer I haven't, but I'd like to take them on all those things maybe now that they're a little bit older. But field trips are amazing. See what you guys can do with that, because that is, I think, one of the most exciting and fun ways to learn. And it's also just sticks with you because you remember. I'm never going to forget seeing the Ark. So that was super cool. I love field trips. So crafts is another way that I love to learn history. When my daughter was doing Heart of Dakota, she made this medieval feast, and it was so cool. She did it all on her own. She studied about the different foods and things that they made back then. She followed a recipe to have all this stuff, and then she made this really pretty place setting. She made a menu, and it was so cool, and it was so memorable. And that's something you could do for any time period. For ancient history, study up what they eat. I love tying in food with history. So study what they eat, have your kids get involved in making a meal that they would have made back then. And I just think that really is such a fun way to learn. Crafts are something that can be messy. I'm not like, I've never been a big craft mom. I guess I probably was when they were tiny, and then I kind of was like, oh, I don't want to deal with a mess. But this year we are using this craft book from Biblioplan, and I will say it's great. Like, we're still very early on in the year, so I haven't done much of this, but they have so many cool crafts, and the kids remember it. It's worth the mess. It really is worth the mess. We made this on one of my day in the life, so you may have heard us talk about this, but the s'mores empanadas. When we were learning about the part of history that was studying Spain, and so this was empanadas being Spanish pastry. My kids loved it. They were so fun. But we've done different things. They're not always like super involved. Like this one was, I don't know how to say this, hagelslag. Making this bread that had to do with what we were studying. It was Dutch. It's a Dutch word for chocolate candy sprinkles. It's a piece of bread. You spread butter on it and you put chocolate sprinkles on it, which sounds kind of gross. But it helps them remember that time period and like, oh, I remember that snack that they made. So actually making the crafts, I really think is worth the time because it really helps them get their hands on it. And it's so much easier to recall when you sit at the table that day and you say, hey, tell daddy something you learned about in history. If you made a craft, they're going to remember it a whole lot more than like, what did we read about? It's just different. This is something, if you're studying Castles. This is so easy. This cute little thing, and this actually was a library make and take that my son made, and they had all these pieces all cut out, which I think would be probably very easy for you to make yourself, but it's just a little castle. So if you're studying castles, and there's a little dragon here with a clothespin, so cute, and just a fun way for them to learn. If that's something you're studying, try to come up with some super easy little craft that will remind them, and they have so much fun with that. Do crafts, even when they're messy, do crafts. One other thing I'm gonna talk about is timeline. Timeline, I think, is one of the best ways to show how biblical history and ancient history, whatever time period you're studying, how they intertwine. I love it. A friend of mine gave me this book of time. It's a timeline from Sunlight years ago. And we had these little pictures that came with our curriculum, and the kids would color it and then glue it on here. And it was so cool. And it actually started with, you were supposed to put a picture, this was my daughter Sienna, you were supposed to put a picture of the day you were born. That's my husband and my little Sienna. But you put the picture of the day you were born, which I think is neat to see. And then they filled in this timeline, and it was so cool if it has these pictures, the little pieces already printed for you. But it's neat to be able to see. We've got the Declaration of Independence right next to Daniel Boone. Like, that's kind of cool to see that those were right next to each other, and you may not necessarily have put that together. So here, this is what I love, stuff like this, where you've got the fiery furnace right here, you've got Daniel, and you've got Confucius. I learned about him in history, but I sure didn't learn about that in history class. But you can see they're right next to each other. Rome becomes a republic right here, right by Daniel. You know, the fall of Babylon is by the fiery furnace. I just think it's neat to be able to see that stuff right next to each other, and a timeline is the best way to do it. I prefer these books. I know a lot of people put that like timeline, you know, that goes across their wall, and you can see it like that. We were never big on like posters and timelines and things like that in our schoolroom, because usually it's also a dining room, or you school in the living room, or whatever, and you don't necessarily want that stuff up. So I love these books. This is another one. This is one that we started this year for Biblioplan. They have a timeline for every time period, and I love this. And this has full color timeline pieces in the back, and you just cut them out. And so I have the kids cut them out and glue them in the time period so that they can see what we're learning. And you sometimes flip back and forth, because we may learn about something one day and then go back and learn about that the next day, just the way the history book is set up. But these are really, really nice timeline pieces. I was really impressed by these, and I don't know, I think having it in color and having like photographs really makes a difference. But this is cool. So I really think it's important to do a timeline, because just if you're visual, and I think most people probably, it just helps to see that. But I have loved doing a timeline. So the last thing that kind of goes back with the living books, having a textbook that is like a living book. You know, there's textbooks that are also living books. They're not just words. I do love, this is a textbook from Biblioplan, but they have pictures throughout. It's so much more interesting the way they have it. And what we do is when my girls and I sit down to read together, I will read all this, and I will call on one of them to read what's underneath of a picture, or they will read these word blocks. It's just much more interesting than the history books I grew up on. There's so many different colored pictures and things throughout here that just makes it so much more interesting. So this is early modern days. Last year we did medieval times, but they have ancient times and all that. This is another thing that Biblioplan recommends that I have really enjoyed, the Kingfisher's Encyclopedia, History Encyclopedia. It's the whole, I just love color. I think it makes it so much more interesting. But this, it has everything. This has like ancient times all the way up to modern days. But they have like a couple pages that they'll read as just a supplemental reading. And my girls will sit down and read this together. And it just re-emphasizes what they've learned. And it's just, I feel like all the pictures and stuff really makes this just more interesting and more fun. You want to make history interesting. The last thing I have is this family Bible. This is the DK Illustrated Family Bible. It's really neat because it does have pictures all throughout. So you're learning about Bible history, but you've got pictures, which, you know, in a regular Bible, you don't have pictures. So it's a little bit harder for kids, and it just makes more sense for them to see these pictures throughout. This is a really, really cool book. I'm so glad we got this, and it's a neat supplement. I wouldn't use this as our Bible. We have a regular Bible that we use, but it's a nice supplement when you are learning about a different time period in history, to pull this out and see that these, go together. Bible and history can go together. So I really love that. I really think living books and just doing your best to make history come alive really makes a difference. Do it as a family if you can. I love that we do history as a family. My 7th grader, my son doesn't sit in on anything yet, but hopefully one day. My 7th grader, my 5th grader, and my 3rd grader all sit down and learn the same history together. I expect more when we do different activities and things like that, or answering questions. I expect her to know a whole lot more than my 3rd grader, but they do it together and we do it as a family, and I learn with them, and I have really enjoyed it. For someone who hated history growing up, I really am enjoying it now. I really love learning about history and learning with them. So it is super fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm not an expert on history, but I'm learning with my kids, and I just wanted to share the things that are working for us and just the way that I think history can be so much more fun. Using these resources and tools and making sure you make history come alive, I think is the best way to do it. So make sure you guys check out that playlist below and check out Leilani's channel. All these ladies are gonna have all kinds of different ideas, and I can't wait to hear what they say and what they do for history, because I'm hoping to learn some stuff too. So if you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you've not yet subscribed, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you're notified every time one of my videos comes out. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.